Hi, everyone. It's the Catholic CEO, Henry Katarna. We're joined today by our special guest, Stephen Ronnow. He is a specialist in a contingency based cost reduction firm that's called Maximus Cost Reduction. That's a very interesting topic. Stephen, welcome. How are you today?
Henry, thank you so much for having me. No, great President's Day out here in Southern California, and excited to be with you and an honor.
Well, I'm honored that you're with us because I know that you have done some very good things. So let's have a quick talk about first of all, who is Stephen Ronnow? What do you do? What's your story? Where did you come from? What kind of background have you got to do this work that you're doing today?
Yeah, life has been a journey, and I always like to joke a very circuitous path in my world, but one that's been all the pieces have kind of interwoven in an interesting way. So I went to Thomas Aquinas College for undergrad and got a great education there. Was fortunate enough to then study at the International Theological Institute with Dr. Mikhail Wallstein, who wrote the introduction to the theology of the body, and one of the founding president of that organization. I then went and got a master's degree in clinical psychology at the Institute for the Psychological Sciences, now called Divine Mercy University. And much of my education was very much focused on the idea that I really liked the idea of being somewhat maybe like a teacher or a coach, the psychology piece, doing therapy. I did that for a year with youth and really loved finding a way to take someone who was here but needed to get somewhere better and trying to help them along that journey. And so today I do something quite different in the world, as you mentioned, of cost reduction. There's a kind of maybe a little bit of a tie-in that you're taking a company that's starting at one point and trying to get them somewhere better and trying to help them mentally get on that journey with you, which is almost in a way like coaching or teaching, but a very different kind of world from the world of academia.
Well, this is very interesting. So you've got this theology, psychology background, and you're into cost reduction, and you're a Catholic, trying to live the Catholic life, I presume. So how does all that fit together, Stephen?
Yeah, well, obviously, I work with all different types of clients, right? So from secular to Catholic organizations and everything in between. And one of the things I see in business is obviously you don't have the same worldview as everyone you work with,
Yeah.
but you don't need to have the same worldview. I think there's something fundamental, especially in business, where people very much value people that are true to their word and people that do what they say they're going to do. Often in business, we'll hear people say, right, all we have is our reputation. And I think what that means is all we have is that if we say something, we try to back that up and do it. And I think that principle of doing that in the business world, if we're true to that as close as we can. I mean, obviously there's outside factors at play sometimes, but as we hold true to that and do what we say and are a person of our word, people come to respect that. And then it crosses kind of the lines of religion or politics, because it's like, I can trust this person because I know that they do what they say they're going to do. So from a Catholic perspective, looking at business and trying to live one's faith, part of that is trying to apply some of these principles that very much apply to the business world, being a person of one's word, trying to be upfront, trying to be, honest and tell the truth, right? These things that as a Catholic, as a Christian, that we would want to do in our daily lives, but obviously play into, being a good business person as well. I mean, that's a starting point.
Yeah, and it's a wonderful starting point. So, for example, let's take an example. Then you're in the cost reduction business, so you
Yeah.
have clients, and you're going to approach, your Catholic values, your Catholic principles that are going to govern your life. You're going to apply those in business. And so, how does it work with a client? You find a client, and you're going to get them a cost reduction in some service that they obtain, but you're going to use Catholic principles to get there. How does that work?
Yeah, I think the biggest, so kind of let's take, let's take a recent client, right?
Sure.
So I've got a
Great.
recent client that is a national restaurant group. They've got restaurants all over the Midwest, all over the East Coast, Southeast. They've got 400 stores. Um, and they are saving right now today 50,000 a month with the work that we do on, really it's one line item that we're saving them this money on. They didn't have to buy anything. They didn't have to change anything at the business level, but they're saving 50,000 a month. So let's go through it, right? So I get on the phone with their CFO, and the CFO says, what can you possibly do to help someone like me who's been a CFO for 30 years? How can you, Stephen Ronnow, and your firm, how do you know something that I don't already know, right? And so even right there, right, it's kind of utilizing even the education at Thomas Aquinas College of like, okay, I can tell him I know something you don't know, but that's not going to work very well with the fact that we all have some sort of ego, right? That we carry with us based on the knowledge that we have of ourselves, and that we're, educated in certain fields. And so I said, all right, well, what is it that you think we do? Right. And teased out that CFO to say, well, you do X. Right. And I said, no, X is not what we do. But instead of saying, well, that's wrong, right, which again, that wouldn't help that relationship, I said, can I flesh that out a little bit? Can I put some meat on the bone there? Well, within 5 minutes, that CFO knew that what I was describing was completely the opposite of what he thought we did. But now he came to that on his own and said, Stephen, how fast can we move forward? And I said, we can move as fast as you'd like, right? Now, part of it was, in that case, allowing that person, I think we talk about in the Catholic world, respecting someone's ability to make their own decisions, right? So part of that is just like we would do in teaching, where, in a Socratic method, like at Thomas Aquinas College, the idea is we learn, or one learns through coming to these principles with tutors that help guide them, but they're coming to that knowledge themselves, not being forced to think something specific. Yes. I try to take that same even learning model with clients and to try to help them to see the truths that we're talking about, but without forcing it down their throat, right? Respecting their autonomy as a person to understand those. Now, as we get into the agreement, right? Well, then how do Catholic principles play into there? Well, I want to be upfront with what we're going to do and what the expectations are, so that there aren't surprises, right? And I think they appreciate that. And then we get into an agreement. I say, all right, now we're going to present what it is that we're going to be changing with your approval. Again, the client isn't necessarily collaboratively involved, but they are there, and things are transparent, so they can see what they need to say yes or no to quarterback it, right? And so again, there's that kind of idea of just trying to be upfront, honest. I mean, these are big company. I mean, this is a billion-dollar company, $500 million company. So obviously these are big companies, some of the ones that we deal with, and really just making sure that they see that they're in charge, even though they might not be doing any of the work, right? And then at the end of it, once we establish that there are savings, really walking through and helping that client to understand it, so that they understand why they're saving, but then also how that means, oh yeah, this is a partner that's helping us, because obviously at that point we share savings based on that realized model. So they have to understand that why there are savings. So in my world, wanting to make sure they understand it and get all their questions answered. So I think big picture, when I look at all of that, a lot of it has to do with making sure that they understand what's going on without, I've seen some cost reduction companies where they say, okay, I'm saving you money. The client may or may not understand, but the way that cost reduction company might think about it is, well, if they pay the bill, they must be happy. Well, maybe, but they might just be paying the bill because they just think they have to. I'd rather them make sure they understand why, because I feel like that just helps the relationship, helps trust, and also allows that company to see, okay, everything is on the table, meaning this is in the light sort of thing where they can understand it and feel confident, not just hope that it's right? So how does that play into the Catholic principles? I mean, I guess it's treating, fundamentally, it's treating others the way I'd want to be treated, right? I want to be treated as if someone's selling me something or pitching me something. I want to know that I'm not being hard sold. I want to know that I'm being brought something, making my own decision, moving forward, as opposed to, well, this is the way it is, and being treated as if I'm the child or something like that, right?
So Stephen, do you have repeat customers? I mean, if you come in and you save a company money, I presume it's one time, or do you have, because we know we talk about the stickiness. If you do these good things and wonderful things, then they're going to love you and you're going to keep them as a customer. In this kind of a business, can you keep, is there a repeat customer?
Well, the way our model is set up is such that we typically are involved for a certain length of time, because part of our work is basically policing the vendor that we save the money from. So for example, just because we're now saving someone money in month one, we're going to stay involved for a certain amount of time to continue to show the client what they're saving every month, but also to find new opportunities to save them, or to help them save money if things get changed at the
Yes.
level of the vendor that would then take away the savings, right? So it's not just, hey, I got you. It's not like, hey, I got you a $50,000 credit and now it's done. This is more, I've put you in the best position to succeed, but now I've got to monitor to make sure that that is still the best position for you, or that it doesn't get undone, which can happen. So
Right.
although repeat clients isn't necessarily the way I would phrase it, I think our clients value what we do, and that's proven out by the fact that, right, we're sharing savings every month as we move forward in this window of time we're together. So the client appreciates, from what I can see, the fact that we continue to get them those savings every month. And then if for some reason at some point we have to go back and redo something, they know that, our model is such that I can't make anything unless they're saving. So there's a lot of, we sit on the side of the client, because they know unless I'm helping them, I'm not winning. I'm not making anything. Right.
Right.
So
And
it's not so much are there repeat clients, but more I see the clients value what we do because they continue to pay us and continue to trust us with this specific part of their business.
yeah, I love that because, as you say, rather than repeat client as a term, it's really the lifetime value of a customer. You can keep a long-term relationship going with a client for many, many years, let's say, and that contributes to this business metric called lifetime value of a customer. So
Correct.
that's great. So can I ask you then, Stephen, as a quick example for, let's say, not every Catholic CEO client is going to be a multi-billion-dollar corporation, but some will be early stage companies and startups. What mentality, what kind of approach would you say to them? I'm looking for your advice now for a smaller business who
Yeah.
wants to save money but doesn't know where to start. What do they do? Do they come to you and say, Stephen, help us?
Well, great question, right? And I think it depends on what they're trying to accomplish and what their goals are. I guess there's the sales part of it, which that's obviously a big part of whatever they're doing. They have to be able to sell the product, right? Whatever they're selling. On the backside, kind of in my world where it's about tightening the screws, I would say I have a lot of I focus on one really specific niche, one line item, right? Of my clients. So I'm not looking at everything, but I have aligned myself with different companies that have specialties in other line items and can do something similar. So for example, sometimes I'll refer my clients to my colleague who focuses on a separate line item where he can save them on that line item, right? Because I've got a network of people that their focus is cost reduction. And obviously, if I think that they do a good job, then I'll introduce them to people and say, all right, this is someone else you can trust to same model, right? They win if they save you money. Um, but obviously, there's thousands of cost reduction companies. So, I mean, it comes down to, right, what are the line items they spend the most on? Who do they trust to go after? Because obviously, most companies, right, it's always a little bit scary to share what they're spending, just because they like
Right.
to keep things close to the vest, right? But I mean, I definitely play, what do you call it, matchmaker for some of the, I mean, I have companies where I'll say, okay, look, you don't need me. Your spend isn't that high in what I look at, but I have these three colleagues. This is what they do. I think they might value you. Do you want to speak to any of them?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. This is one of the reasons that I'm glad you're with us today is because in the Catholic CEO, we talk about, resisting the culture, running your business according to Catholic principles, but doing more than the minimum that the law requires. So, for example, we tell our clients, you can start approaching a just wage. You can start paying people to take their feast day off or their baptismal day or for family events like First Holy Communions or confirmations. But you're going to have to be a really smart, sharp business leader to do that, because you're going to have to, you're still competing in the real world out there.
Correct.
So when you talk cost reduction, again, I'm saying that's why I'm glad you're here with us, because they have to be sharp on their costs as well as excellent on their sales. So what advice would you give then to a, let's say, a family business, or somebody who's doing a side gig even at home, a mother or a father trying to earn a little bit of extra income? They're going to be, you want them to be sharp. What advice do you give to the entrepreneur these days about cost reduction in general?
About cost reduction or about selling their product?
And selling the product too. Yes, let's do
Okay.
both.
So I think in anything in sales, I think the way I always have looked at sales is this, right? I know that I can't get to any $500 million, $1 billion, or even $10 million company without help, right? So what I mean by that is the power of relationships, right? We know as Catholics that, right, we're part of this communion of saints, right? And we have people praying for us in heaven. Well, I don't think the business world is that different in the sense that relationships matter, right?
Yes.
Just like, what is it? Was it the wedding feast at Cana, where, gosh, what was it? It was like the first networking opportunity we see in the Bible, where it's like, well, do whatever he tells you, right? Was it Mary, I think, that says,
Mary says,
right? Do whatever he tells
do what
you.
he tells you.
Right. It was a referral. It was a referral for winemaking, right? Well, in the business world, right, it's relationships that help us often get to the right people. And so depending on what is being sold, I think it matters, right? So if it's a big ticket item, it's a little bit different than if it's like a smaller ticket item. But I think the principle that I've always gone with in my world is, I mean, in mine, I'm going after these larger companies. And so there's a lot of relationship capital necessary to get to the right person for me, which is these CFOs at larger companies. And so one of the things that then I see is working backwards. All right, if I need help to get to that relationship started, I need to have people who are willing to make an introduction, right? Unless I want to cold call my whole life and hope that something hits. And that's possible, but that's hard, right? And so in the relationship capital world, it's all about deposits and withdrawals. And what I mean is that, right, fundamentally, people help people that help them. So if I want someone to make an introduction to me to someone in their network that's valuable, what have I done for that person first to motivate that person to help me? And so I call that making a deposit, right? So, and so in my world, for example, I'll give an example. I run two different events, monthly, bi-monthly events that are focused on giving value to the attendees. One of them is like a mini version of what people would experience in a Vistage group, where I bring together VPs and C-level of the restaurant industry, and I'll moderate a Q&A for them, for example, right? Now, when I moderate that Q&A, I'm not directly selling anything, and I'm not pitching them on anything, but those C-level and VP level director level executives now get the value of being able to network within their industry at a high level and discuss best practices. Well, what happens? They're very grateful to me for doing that. And it starts this relationship where I always joke when people say, well, why do you do that? And I say, well, because I know by the end of it, people will say, that Stephen Ronnow guy, he's not an idiot, and they laugh. But the reason I say it like that is because I've now separated myself from the rest of the business world selling things where they're like, well, those people are just a waste of my time, to, if I want to reach out to some of these people and ask for a phone call to discuss anything, well, guess what? They'll take that call, right? So I found a way to be valuable to those executives where then, right, later on, I can give them a phone call and say, hey, I wanted to pick your brain on something I'm working on. Well, not only will they listen, but maybe they'll become a client. Maybe they'll refer me to their friends. But again, why? Because now when I'm asking for the withdrawal, which is their time, I've already made a deposit, which is the value that I'm giving them. So for a small business, right, that's trying to make it or get off the ground, there's different ways their business ties into giving value. Maybe they just started, a restaurant and they're looking to get people in. Well, what would I do in that case? I would try to go to some of the little leagues and some of the kid leagues and offer as a donation some of my food, right? Because why? well, that's giving value. And then people are going to try it and be like, yeah, I want to go eat there for lunch. You
Yeah.
know, if I'm selling a specific product that isn't food based and I can't do it like that, I'd find a way to, I'll give you a good example. My little girl makes earrings and sells them for $7, $8 a piece.
Yeah.
And people buy them. And this is just something that she does as a 12-year-old to have spending money and be able to tithe, etc. Well, we went to an event where I knew all the people there, and she didn't tell me she was going to do this, but she brought all of her earrings and she told everyone there, because they have prices on the back, but she told everybody there, she said, I'm just giving these today for free. And people said, well, we'll buy them. And she said, no, but if you want to make a donation, that's fine. Well, two things happen.
Oh, yeah.
Because she gave them away for free, number one, people were giving her donations bigger than the normal sale price. And number two, they told her, can you make more so I can bring this to my friends? But part of that was just the giving value before asking for something. It's a very, I don't know, fundamental principle that I think in business applies to any business, but the way to figure out how it applies to a specific business depends on what the thing is that's being sold, right? So those are some examples.
Yeah, I love it. And I'm chuckling a little bit here because I want to be able to hear somebody say the Catholic CEO is not an idiot. So first of all, I want to hear that. And secondly, so I love what you said about that. But the granddaughters in Texas they sell scrunchies, and that's I'm going to pass on. I'm going to make sure that they watch this video. So Stephen, here's the thing: we've come to the natural end of this short form session today.
Yeah.
As we bring you to a close here, where do we find you? Where do we get you? What's your website? Do you have any books, offerings, courses, these sessions you're talking about? Where do we find you?
So a couple places, right? On LinkedIn, if they type in Stephen Ronnow, Stephen with a PH, Ronnow, and they look, they're going to find me. It's going to say founder of the Restaurant Leaders Lunch, as well as niche cost reduction. So they can find me there on LinkedIn. They can email me at Stephen with a PH R. So Stephen R at maximoussavings.com. And those would probably be the best two places to reach out, via email or on LinkedIn. And happy to connect and kind of go from there and see where things lead.
Wonderful, thank you. So we're going to add these to the show notes. So if you watch for that in the show notes. And so Stephen, we appreciate you coming today. It's very valuable what you've given us, because you brought that Catholic perspective to a real business problem that people face. And so it fits in with the kind of work we do. So thanks again for being here. God bless you and your work. And we'll see you again another time, I hope.
Hey, God bless you, Henry. And thank you so much. And it's again, an honor to be able to speak to your platform and make those connections.
Thank you so much.